Is Drive to Survive over now? And by that, I mean, now that Daniel Ricciardo has officially been announced as leaving RB and
I am
possibly,
so surprised.
really, let's discuss. All right, Shez, breaking news that was probably breaking forever finally broke. If you watched the Singapore Grand Prix, you knew that Daniel Ricciardo was done. You could have picked up on one of 15,000 cues, including the very fact that RB decided to pit him with 2 laps to go, well, 1 lap to go, really, to get him the fast lap. I am just disappointed that we did not see any donuts at the end of that race. That was the only thing that was missing, and the only thing I hung my hopes on, Shez, but we finally have it. RB have made it official. Daniel Ricciardo is leaving as of right now, or maybe the end of the Singapore Grand Prix, and he will be replaced by Liam Lawson for the next 6 races, plus the 2 sprint races that we'll have. So there you have it. What are your thoughts as this went through your mind? Because this is clearly the first time you would have heard about it.
I have had no idea that this was happening. I'm completely caught off guard. But I think there's probably two things that we need to talk about, and there's a couple of things that I think we should
Hmm.
debate at least. The first is, where do we see Daniel Ricciardo's career? Was this the right time for him to have to hang up his helmet, whether it was forced on him or not? Um, do we think that Daniel Ricciardo's time in Formula One essentially has come to an end anyway? And what do we think of Daniel Ricciardo's career as a whole?
Oof.
So do you want to answer that first question first? What do you think? Because this,
Yeah, so I think there's a part of me that would argue that his career was over, especially after that McLaren exit. I think that was pretty much it, right? I mean, it seemed like Christian Horner was investing his personal capital and whatever soft spot he's had for Daniel and trying to bring him back through this very awkward route, I might add, that ends in probably the most awkward but the most understandable way given how the last couple years have been, right? I mean, everything from him showing up in that first race in Zandvoort after them replacing DeVries, getting his wrist injured and fractured rather, and being out, and then just sort of being in and out. It's been a very clumsy last couple years. So I would argue that his career was effectively over at the end of his McLaren stint. And I think this was a Hail Mary. I think he alluded to the fact that this would have been a fairy tale ending, which I think is really interesting to sort of look at, right? And we can talk about this on another day. The mindset of a Formula One driver. We often talk, Shez, about the mindset of champions and the goats, if you will. But it's just amazing to see what Daniel has done the last couple of years, which for me ties into his legacy question, by the way. The fact that he came back in the manner that he came back as a reserve driver, then getting promoted to, well, promoted to RB, right? I mean, he was a reserve driver for Red Bull and then, okay, whatever, right? Like the whole idea of that is like, to me, it's just amazing to see the level of desperation someone as accomplished as Daniel Ricciardo had in wanting to race. Like, I mean, you could have argued back when he exited McLaren, he's now 36, so he was 34, give or take then, right? In Formula One age, I mean, given how young, I mean, Kimi Antonelli is going to start at damn near 17 years old. That's pretty old, no? So I would have argued that his career was done then. I never really thought that he would realistically be in the running for a Checo Perez seat, but I think it was all just sort of Christian Horner's doing. So in my mind, his career was kind of done a couple of years ago, and he hasn't shown anything since then, to be very honest, too.
Yeah, I think he had a question in his mind, which I think we're going to answer in this segment anyway. I
Yeah.
think he had a question in his mind about whether leaving Red Bull was the catalyst for everything that went wrong for him subsequently, and that's what's led him to where he is right now, or what led him to him having to leave McLaren. So he went back to RB thinking, oh, okay, well, I've remedied that. I'm back within the RB, the Red Bull fold, so I'll be able to discover the old magic, or at least he wanted to know if he still had it. And I think, I think Scott Mitchell has said this a couple of times on the race because I haven't been able to see this in a quote. I've heard him say it, that uh, Danny Rick has kind of admitted that at this point, he can sometimes hit the highs that he was able to hit before, but he's not able to access it consistently. And the level, the base level of Formula One is just miles high. And we know that. Just look at the caliber of drivers that don't have championships right now. Like they're unbelievably good. And he just says, look, I either can't motivate myself or I just can't reach that level anymore. But the question I want to know is where did it go wrong? Where was the mistake in his career? What move was it that was wrong?
Oof. I think in hindsight, I think we can point to a couple of different areas, right? But I think the most simplest, the most straightforward argument would have been to not leave Red Bull, given where they're at, right? Him deciding to move to Renault, and we all learned about that through Drive to Survive, and really Drive to Survive largely survived because of Daniel Ricciardo and his vivacious personality and his exuberance and everything. And I think that's something that we will miss in and around the paddock, although I'm not sure we saw much of it in the last couple of years anyway. But I think if you want to kind of go back to where it started, I think it started there. But to be honest with you, Shez, like I could even argue against that because had he stayed at Red Bull, I mean, maybe Red Bull would have canned him anyway. No, and given what Max Verstappen has shown since then, I don't know that he was going to ever get the preferential alpha driver treatment. So I would probably trace
So
back to
shouldn't
that a
he
little bit.
have like okay, so let's take that one step back, right? Let's talk about 2018, 2019
Mm.
Daniel Ricciardo, because for the longest time, I was a massive Daniel Ricciardo fan. I thought from 2014 until 2018, 19, and even beyond that a little bit, because I really wanted him to do well at McLaren. I thought this guy was a championship caliber driver, right? I don't think I'm alone in that. So if I think that Daniel Ricciardo is a championship caliber driver who actually matched Max Verstappen in that car across 16 to 18 by and large, right? Why did he have to leave? Shouldn't he have just stuck his feet in the ground
I
and
mean,
said, "Nah, this is my
Shez,
team. I'm going to
I
win a championship here."
I have told you this over and over again. When you start winning and when you start seeing success, that's when all the troubles arrive. That's when your true interpersonal feelings arrive. And his move, at least as far as I understand it, from Red Bull to back then Renault, was largely driven by his ego, right? It was largely driven by the idea that, oh, I'm not getting the preferential treatment that I should. I should be the number one driver. You're placing all of your eggs in this proverbial basket for a young Max Verstappen. Well, I mean, to be honest, the fact that he got even promoted to Red Bull, we kind of knew already. Like sometimes you can just tell, right, that someone's got it, and I think Red Bull could see it further
But
ahead than the rest of us too.
didn't you think that Daniel Ricciardo had it?
No, I didn't.
And
Well,
even at
okay.
that point, even at
Hmm.
that point,
I
because
would
I did.
probably, yes, no, I wouldn't disagree with you if you did, right? I mean, this is a matter of opinion. In my opinion, I always thought of him as a great driver, but it's kind of like the way I see Carlos Sainz, right? He can be great on most occasions, but is he that guy who can go out and get it consistently? I
Hmm.
don't think it was quite there too. Now, in fairness to him, a lot of Red Bull struggles were also tied to their engine issues. So maybe if their engines were better, if Renault's engine ironically were better,
Okay,
and so the irony in this also says is that he went to the engine maker that had all of the issues that probably mired a lot of his own results.
and
I
did
know there
pretty
were other
well
things
there,
too.
and did pretty
And
well there. So,
yeah, okay, but I mean the measurement changed, no? I mean, so
but okay, so let's go back to that question again. So Daniel Ricciardo was potentially a championship level driver, in my eyes anyway. I think consistently in that, especially in that 2018 season, up until his engine started blowing up on him, he was consistently at the front of the grid doing Daniel Ricciardo things. Who is going to forget that China drive
yeah, of
where
course,
where
yes.
he dive bombs Valtteri Bottas in on the same lap that Max Verstappen is pirouetting Sebastian Vettel?
Yes, I
You
do
know what I
remember
mean?
that. No,
So
I but
So,
but
so why did he not just, if he is a championship level driver, why did he not stick it out at Red
yeah,
Bull?
I mean, you would have to ask him that, right? Like, I mean, I think that book is going to come out, and the TV show. I'm guessing something along those lines is going to come out. But I mean, in the same way, look at Fernando Alonso, right? He has made all the wrong decisions for as great as he is on the track. He's made all the wrong,
But his
but
driving
his
character has
driving.
never changed.
But that's what I'm saying. So Alonso is in that separate category, right? In the pantheon of maybe top 10 Formula One drivers of all time. You could argue on a different day, but you wouldn't even argue that for Daniel Ricciardo. And so I think there's some level of that inherently. And so I guess you could even ask the question, right? Is his success largely driven by what Red Bull was able to do, bar the engine issues that they honestly had no
Okay.
control over? So maybe
Okay.
not, but
But Max was then able to take that team, allow it to be built around himself, and was
exactly,
winning races.
exactly. And Max is
So,
Max, yeah.
but would
Yeah.
that have been as easy for Max if Daniel Ricciardo had stayed? Okay, so
Yes,
that's the argument, right? So you think yes. I think 2018 me wasn't entirely sure, but I could understand why he left. The team was inexorably moving towards Max Verstappen. Why wouldn't they? They've just poached this guy from under the nose of their closest rivals
yeah,
and stuck him in a car because they have absolute faith in him. And how has he repaid that? He won
yeah.
the
I mean,
first
it's just
race that he turned up
ridiculous.
at. So
Yeah,
you can understand why
yes,
everything was
absolutely.
moving towards Max Verstappen. And my contention actually is that I don't think this was the mistake, right? I think Daniel Ricciardo, if you're thinking about Daniel Ricciardo in the moment at that time, I think that was the right move for him to make. My reasoning for that is ultimately, mate, you in Formula One to win a world championship, to be successful in the long term, you have to have everything working for you. It's what Max has had now for a little bit of time, right?
But
Yes, he's superbly talented and an amazing racing driver, but he also has done the things and positioned himself in a way so that all of the chips are in his favor. Do you know who else has that had that? Michael Schumacher. Do you know who else had that? Ayrton Senna. I've just come off a space where I was saying exactly the same thing. Ayrton Senna is always, put on a pedestal as this guy that was happy to race anyone. That everyone will put up that video where he's arguing with Alain Prost about coming to Williams in 1993. I would go there, but I'm being blocked by Alain Prost, which is true. Prost didn't want Senna there. But what everyone seems to forget is that in 1985, when he turns up at Lotus, he tells Lotus, I don't want Derek Warwick at this team because he's too fast. And the reason for that, because he understood that if the team takes any focus away from him, then they're not going quick enough. He's not going quick enough. And that's what champions want. They want the entire team to be built around them, to focus on them, to make them go fast. And they have the underlying confidence and ability to make
mhm.
to run with that and make it work. It's what Max has done up until ever since he was freed of Daniel Ricciardo. He was gonna do it anyway, but he had that accelerated and look what he's done with it. So I can't blame Daniel Ricciardo for wanting to leave Red Bull at that
Yeah.
time.
Well, to your point, Shez, he's also
Yeah.
seen what happened right before he got there, right? I mean, Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber, another Australian multi 2021. He's seen that happen. So he maybe on some level believes that they've already diverted attention from him to Max, right? By the fact that they've promoted him so quickly, it already tells you what you know. So I think in other words, he sort of saw his window closing at Red Bull and he looked around and said, okay, well, where
Let's
is
go
my next
somewhere
best
else.
chance? Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I think the mistake came in moving to McLaren. Because
okay. Yeah,
because
I can
because
argue that too.
because I
Yeah.
think actually that Renault, yes, you can look at where Alpine are now and think, what the hell are you talking about, Shez? But I think actually in that 2019, 2020 period, actually there was a bit of stability. They were getting better. He had Nico Hulkenberg in the car opposite him, and we know how fast Nico Hulkenberg is, but he took care of him. Like actually, that wasn't a problem. And from the first race where both cars retired, if you remember that. So they were in Bahrain, both cars retired. He took that donkey of a car and stuck it on the podium twice between
Yeah.
2019 and 2020. So actually that project was starting to bear fruit, but he moved aside to McLaren. And I have to say at the time I thought, yeah, it's not the worst move in the world, but actually in hindsight, that killed his
But
career.
But I think this is where you need a little bit of luck, right? This is something that Fernando Alonso has been searching for a while too, which is you can be the greatest thing, but you also need a team behind you with some special talent, some special organizational structure. It doesn't have to always be
Well,
100% perfect, but it has to be at least enough to put you in contention for victories, for podiums, race in and out. And this realistically, it could have been only two or three teams that he really two teams at that point where he could have gone to. I mean, McLaren were nowhere relevant than they are now, at least in the scope of
but
fighting for a championship, right? But
but I think
yeah,
they were building to something. But I think it
correct.
showed us something about Daniel Ricciardo because I thought he was going to be an adaptable driver. I thought he was going to be in that Lewis Max mold that where he could adapt his driving and drive around the problems of a car, right? Which is what Lando essentially has been doing since he stepped into that McLaren. And what we found out at McLaren is that he couldn't do that. And
Yeah,
it's difficult, man.
yeah.
It's something that I think Lewis has talked about this season that he said, look, these cars don't react to my driving the way that I like. So my choice is either I change my driving or I
Right.
carry on trying to get the best out of the car with the way that I drive. And he
But
said, I
Shez,
will do the latter because
yeah, no,
trying
I
to
think
change my driving is going to ruin my performance.
And I think that this is where a little bit of luck is also involved, right? Because to
Hmm.
your point, yes, Lewis can change his driving style, but is he as effective as he was back when he was driving the style that he prefers?
No, no, of
It
course he's
doesn't
not.
always translate, right? And
Yeah,
I think this is the same danger that Lewis Hamilton faces in going to Ferrari because everything looks great on paper, but again, you have to go and make things happen. And you have to have some breaks along the way. You have to have the right support. You need a little bit of everything,
yeah.
which is why I think it's unfair to I mean, in general, and we're discussing it, and we absolutely should. But as Daniel himself said, like I wouldn't change a thing in hindsight because you only make the best decisions that you can in those moments, and
Yeah.
and you can go back and look. There's a couple of lucky breaks here and there, but it is what it is in that regard.
So I don't disagree with that. And lest this discussion disintegrate into another Lewis Hamilton chat, let's move it on.
No, we're not talking about Lewis today yet.
So Liam Lawson is now
Oof.
in that seat.
Can I just say
Um,
one thing before you get to that?
yeah,
I think Red Bull could have done him a little bit better, right? If they were going to play out this experiment, and I know there are other permutations which all kind of go back to Checo Perez's seat. In a weird way, this all ends up again in Checo's lap, right? They could have helped at least see him out this season,
yeah.
or they could have at least told us this by like what were they expecting coming into the Singapore Grand Prix? Shez? Were they expecting would a podium position have changed everything? Is that what you're telling me that would have happened? No. Then why wouldn't they let us know? And at least Daniel could have gotten a big see off if he wasn't going to see off the season. Like it makes no sense. So we can continue, but that was just ridiculous to
Yeah,
be honest.
it was out of order. And yeah, not what the
The
guy
worst kept secret.
deserved.
Everyone knew that was happening, and yet we
Yeah,
couldn't officially announce
yeah.
it. It could have. This makes no sense.
So we're going to stick Liam Lawson in the car for the last six races of this
Oof.
season, and he's going to go up against Yuki Tsunoda. What is the point of this? Why are they sticking Liam Lawson in that car?
To find
Daniel
out
kind
if
of
he can replace Checo Perez, no,
for when?
for next year.
For 25.
Yeah. I mean,
So who's going
I
to
don't think we got confirmation that Perez is continuing for next year, right? We got confirmation that he has the seat right now. I don't think there was anything, and even if they did say Shez, I wouldn't believe them because
Okay.
Red Bull have a knack for doing the exact opposite of what they say.
So I think Red Bull have a big driver problem, right? Because
Of course.
right as of right now, the shortlist to either get into RB or get into the full Red Bull seat is very, very small. I think the next best bunch of drivers they've got Isaac Hadjar in F2, who is second in the championship at the moment in his second season there. And you've got Arvid Lindblad, who's down in F3, finished fourth in the F3 championship this season. So they're the future that are coming forward. Um, Liam Lawson may end up at Red Bull in 2025. He may not. But let's say, for argument's sake, that he does not do the business against Yuki Tsunoda. What happens in 2025?
I'm guessing they're going to go with a new driver, right? And I would just like to add how unfair this is for Liam Lawson too, because he is in a no-win situation. He has to be thankful that he's getting an opportunity after what seems to be an excruciating two-thirds of the season now that he's had to deal with questions about whether he's going to be able to race or not knowing exactly all this other drama and BS that's been going on. But to try to prove something in 6 races, and I would love to know what the measurement is. Is it a top 10 finish or a certain number of top 10 finishes? Is it finishing ahead of Yuki? Is it all of the above? It is a very, very unfair and a brutal situation to be in. Because this could either be, the way I see it, Shez, he's either going to impress them enough to have the Red Bull seat or he's out. Like, I don't think there's an in between in there because they've already had flashes of him in the past, no? So he's done 3 races in the past, correct? So
He's
what
done
did they
five
actually,
races.
oh, five
Five
races. There you go.
races, right? He did 5 races. In every
In
race,
RB, yeah.
he was out qualified by Yuki Tsunoda, other
And
than
they,
in Singapore when Yuki was impeded by Max Verstappen in Q2. That's why Liam Lawson out qualified him there. And in the races, a lot of things got lucky for him. Yuki did not start 2 of those races, and he had a massive engine change in Mexico. So it
yeah,
wasn't
it's not apples and yeah.
a fair playing field, right? So you've got information on how Liam Lawson compares to Yuki Tsunoda in 2023. You're going to give him another 6 races. Let's say he gets hammered by Yuki Tsunoda. What does Yuki have to do? Why is it that they still won't put Yuki Tsunoda in that seat? He's beaten everybody
Shez,
they've put him up against.
that's the mystery of the season. And I think I saw some weird stat that said that he actually finished ahead of Checo a record number of races or something like that, or like qualifying position, whatever. There's some metrics out there that prove that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a head scratcher, no? And and now it's become a weird situation, Chez, because I think at one point we could have thought he would be going to Aston Martin, but Newey moving there could have different repercussions, a la Max Verstappen. So I'm
Yeah.
not even sure if Yuki would get to go to Aston Martin now. That's not even
He's
clear.
got nowhere to go.
He's got nowhere to go,
But it's a weird conveyor belt that they just put driver after driver
and they won't
up
put
there.
him
Actually,
in.
they put the same 2 drivers up against Yuki Tsunoda. He keeps beating them, and the conclusion from Red Bull is this driver isn't good enough. It's never Yuki is actually pretty good. Maybe we should give him a shot. And
Yeah.
that mystifies me. I do not
So,
understand it.
but I'm guessing in theory they could still give him a shot. Like there's no reason, there's nothing stopping him from being promoted to an
Do you
Red
see
Bull
it
seat.
happening?
I don't see it happening, but it seems like they don't want to do that for reasons that are inexplicable. At least they know why. But and this is the weird thing, Shez. They know that I guess in a way they're telling us that he's not good enough for a Red Bull seat, but he's not bad enough to let go of either. Like just get rid of him if that's the case
Because
too.
he's
No,
better than all of the drivers they keep
but
putting him up
what is the
against. So
point of it?
the only scenario I see is Liam Lawson isn't good enough against Yuki Tsunoda, so they bring Isaac Hadjar up into the seat in 2025. Liam Lawson gets ditched, and they carry on with Sergio Perez until 2026. It's the
Yes.
only thing I can possibly see happening. But then what happens in 2025 if Yuki then beats Isaac Hadjar? So what are you going to just replace him and stick Arvid Lindblad in? What happens if he beats Arvid Lindblad? You're going to do the same thing to Yuki again and again and again and again
Yeah,
against
and
all of your junior drivers?
unfortunately for Yuki, he is now in this weird purgatory where he's not going to get to go up. And with every passing race, he's just going to end up having to take an Alex Albon / Pierre Gasly route without having even tasted the Red Bull seat, let alone anything else. So that's just
But
I don't
that's
know
a
what to do
problem.
there.
That's exactly it. That purgatory means that nobody else is able to see anything of him. There's constantly that question of why don't Red Bull want to promote him? Is there something wrong with him? When he's not really done anything to suggest that that is the case.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
I
no,
don't
but nobody else
understand.
will give him a chance
I,
because of that.
I don't.
I just
It's a
find
head
it.
scratcher. I mean, we had this discussion, right? Even before they announced Perez staying for his contract, kind of thing, before the summer break, right? And it's just weird. I do not, for the life of me, understand why they wouldn't even give him a chance for. Look, Shez, there's a couple of wild cards in here, right? There are rumors about Checo Perez retiring at the end of this season. If that happens, that and I don't know. Again, they're just rumors, right? So, and I
Rumors,
don't
yeah.
know. I
I
don't know
heard
if
that
that
too. Yeah.
if that happens, that might change things. If Max decides to either leave and go to Aston or retire completely, that changes things again. So I think maybe they're thinking, and again, it doesn't mean that it's logical, but I think their thinking is that Yuki could be in for that seat at Red Bull if Max leaves. Like that's my only, and again, that's not something I would die on a
I
hill
mean,
on, but you know,
I feel like the entire Formula One grid would have to retire, and then they'd say to Yuki, "Yeah, we're probably going to go with Arvid Lindblad." Bye.
yeah,
And
I don't
I think that's
understand what they're
probably what
doing.
would happen.
And it's been a mess. I think you summed it up perfectly. I think the Red Bull are a complete mess in terms of how they're handling the driver situation. And I think that this ends one way. This ends in Max leaving. I mean, this is just my thoughts, but the whole dynasty is about to explode, right? It's teetering on that edge, and you can see that race in and out. Like they're desperately trying to nick every point off of Lando Norris, and yes, they're going to couch it under the idea of, oh yeah, we're giving Daniel Ricciardo a farewell, but the reality is that they're really hanging on by a thread in this championship, and I think Max sees this, and I think there's a good chance that he's going. Because one thing we have seen is when Formula One teams start to fall back, there is no easy solution to being
Yeah,
able to come back. There just
yeah,
isn't. So
yeah, and I agree. And I think that the problem that Red Bull will have is that if Max Verstappen leaves, they no longer have the pull from an
they have
operational
nothing.
strategy or technical point of view
Yeah,
to attract a top level driver. They might do for a year or two until everyone understands what the reality of Red Bull's situation
yeah.
is, but after that, I don't think it's any further. Anyway, I think that's probably where we should call it a day. But let us know what you guys think. Where did you think it all went wrong for Daniel Ricciardo? What is going to happen at that second RBC? Is Liam Lawson going to blow Yuki Tsunoda away? And if he doesn't, what are they going to do with Yuki? So many questions, not many answers. Let us know. Please like, please subscribe, please leave us a comment, and we will read every single one of them and we will reply to as many as we possibly can. I think in the last one, actually, we replied to every single comment. There's one of us in there all the time. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Later.